Gunjoiro. Kyudei.
イマジンを刺激する。
What comes to your mind when you hear the phrase pop art? If the first thing you think is Andy Warhol and cans of Campbell's soup, you aren't alone. The 1962 series depicting different flavors of that popular meal is one of the most iconic works of not just pop art, but modern art in general. What makes pop art so special? How did a single picture of a $1.48 can of soup end up costing $11.8 million at auction in 2006? To know this, we need to understand a wider context. In our new episode, we will give you an overview of everything pop art, how it emerged, who was involved, what role it played in history, and what the deal was with all those soup cans and Coca-Cola bottles. If you want to support us and see more content like this, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and let us know what you'd like to see more of in the future. Pop art was an artistic movement that emerged in the 1950s in Great Britain and the United States. In Britain, a group of young artists and critics who called themselves the Independent Group started having meetings in the Institute of Contemporary Art in London around 1952 to 1953. With members like Richard Hamilton and Eduardo Pelosi, the Independent Group got together to discuss some of the pressing issues they saw in contemporary art. The gallery-based idea of art was elitist for them, as it didn't reflect the real lives and needs of people, nor was it available to them. In 1955, the Independent Group discussed mass culture, film, advertisements, comic books, sci-fi, celebrities, and pop music. They started making collages using elements from everyday life like found objects, magazine cutouts, comic book characters, ads, and product labels. Of course, this didn't go over too well with critics. Mass culture was not only considered kitsch and consumerist, it was also very American. Unsurprisingly, the most dynamic developments in the pop art movement came from the United States. Robert Rauschenberg and Jasper Johns were among the first artists to oppose the dominant trends of abstract expressionism. Rauschenberg drew inspiration from the Dadaism movement, and he believed that art needed to be closely tied to real life. Rauschenberg used discarded ready-made objects in his works before silkscreen printing made it easier to transfer photographs onto his paintings. Jasper Johns was most notable for his depictions of the American flag. In the 1950s, both Johns and Rauschenberg were called neo-Dadaists. In 1962, however, the term pop art was coined to describe the use of bold colors, repetitions, and mass media references from comics and magazines to Hollywood stars and popular food and beverage commercials. Roy Lichtenstein is one of the most notable figures in 1960s American pop art. His work owes the most to popular American comic books like Batman and Spider-Man, using thick black lines, primary colors, Ben-Day dots, and ironic speech bubbles and onomatopoeia. Although they represented mass-printed media, most of Lichtenstein's best-known works were in fact meticulously painted oils on canvas. Seems hard, doesn't it? We can only assume Andy Warhol thought so too, because around 1962, he started using screen printing in his works. The printmaking technique allowed Warhol to craft numerous iterations of the same photographic image on paper or on canvas. This brought us some of the most iconic images of the pop art movement. Warhol was obsessed with the celebrity world. For him, images of popular actors, singers, and even politicians were an essential part of American life, just like the household brands Coca-Cola and, you guessed it, Campbell's Soup.
Although works of pop art were heavily criticized for their admiration of banality and consumerism, the movement quickly became popular. And more importantly, it raised some of the essential questions of art that eventually led us to postmodernism.
Questions such as, what can be art? Are some subjects more important than others? Who gets to enjoy art? The fact that everything and anything could become a subject of art undermined the elitism and hierarchy that had been upheld in the world of art for centuries.
Some of these questions had already been raised by Dada artists in the first 2 decades of the 20th century, but it was pop art that really pushed things further.
And into the mainstream. Respected philosopher and art critic Arthur Danto went as far as declaring, "The end of art," after having seen Warhol's Brillo boxes in New York in 1964. Warhol's new works were screen-printed doubles of original wooden Brillo soap pad boxes, indiscernible in size, shape, or form from the product itself. Unlike Duchamp's fountain, this series wasn't even signed. The fact that they could now be understood as art brought Danto to the conclusion that art history had entered an entirely new chapter. This didn't mean people would stop producing art. It just meant the idea of a linear progression of art history was over. Let's recap. Pop art was a revolutionary movement that developed in the 1950s in Britain and the US, peaking during the 1960s with artists like Andy Warhol, Roy Lichtenstein, and Robert Rauschenberg. If you are looking at a work that features celebrities, flat color surfaces, speech bubbles, or brand logos, it's probably pop art. The movement marked the end of modernism and kick-started the rapid transition into postmodernism. It challenged society to take a closer, better look at their daily lives. But the glamorous and party-like atmosphere of pop art didn't last long. The social and political circumstances of the 1970s called for a more critical standpoint, and conceptual art, performance art, feminist art, and land art emerged. So, what do you think of pop art and its figures? Let us know in the comments section. And don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and Instagram for your regular dose of culture from Curious Muse. If you'd like to support us, you can now do so by joining our channel. Your membership means we can keep this project running and continue to share knowledge with more people. Thank you for your help.
With his artwork in demand as never before, Warhol resolved to step up production. In January 1963, he moved his studio from the parlor of his townhouse, no longer large enough to accommodate his larger paintings, to the third floor of an abandoned red brick firehouse a few blocks away on East 87th Street. In June, to increase production still further, he took on a new assistant, a 20-year-old college student from the Bronx named Gerard Malanga, who had learned how to silkscreen a few years before while working for a necktie manufacturer.
The more you look at Warhol's work, the more you look at Warhol, the more you see a mind constantly engaged in the studio. We see him making a series of decisions in the studio, how one painting leads to another painting, how one series leads to another painting. And there are a series of insights, and you get a sort of logic almost that unfolds in the studio that's of an intensely committed and engaged, sophisticated and thoughtful artist.